General Motors, Chrysler, Lehman Brothers, Circuit City. 18 months ago, those would have led a list of big, large, great companies, right? When Jim Collins wrote Good to Great, the best performing company in his book was Circuit City. 18 months later, where are we? What's going on? Are the management incompetent? Has greed taken over the leadership of our senior companies, our biggest companies? Are people asleep at the switch? So what can we blame the situation that we have right now? How about market shifts? There was a time, a long time ago, when you could build a company and sort of expect the world to stay reasonably the same for a while, right? Today, what's the half-life of an idea? What's the half-life of your investment in a plant or technology? Will the product you launch still be in the market by the time the patent gets issued? Things are moving fast, very, very fast. But if we take a look at what we've been teaching ourselves and what we've rewarded inside of our companies, a lot of that has been around, how do I build a success formula? How do I figure out what business I'm in, get very focused on it, and then try to defend and extend it? Try to do more of what we've been doing for a very long time. Knuckle down, cut the fat, get with the program, learn to excel, focus, focus, focus. Well, how well is that working out at Sara Lee? Or Allstate? Or Kraft? Increasingly, we're starting to see that that approach to business isn't working well anymore, right? It's just not delivering the returns. Well, why? And we come back to the word market shift. Things keep moving. With global technology today, global access, it's possible for people to raise $1 billion in a day. It's possible for somebody to build a manufacturing plant in 2 months. They can take your best ideas from your CAD/CAM systems and pull them off the internet where you put them up to help your customers and replicate your product in 30 days. How do you compete whenever things are moving that fast? I think the first thing we have to recognize is trying to defend and extend what we always did just doesn't work anymore. It's a new game. It's a new game, and we have to play that game differently. We now know that any large business has a 50% probability of seeing their growth stall in any 2-year period. Now, that's bad. We can look at the last year. Now, that data I gave you was compiled from starting in the 1980s. If we take a look at what's happened in the last year, we've seen a lot more growth stalls than that, right? We're seeing people hit the wall on revenue, maybe even see revenue decline. Once revenue goes flat, there is a 93% probability you will never consistently grow at a mere 2%. A 93% chance you won't even grow at 2%. Because without growth, you're not vital. And that's why we have to be able to understand market shifts. So, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? I spent 12 and a half years trying to understand that 7%. What do they do that keeps them from getting stuck? How do they behave differently? And I found out it kind of gets to the core of how we run our companies. So the first thing I want you to think about is, how do you do your planning? I bet everybody in here has got planning systems. I bet you're all working on your budgets for 2010 right now, right? And how do you do your budgeting? Let's see. What did I do in 2009? How much did I sell of product A, product B, product C? What's happening in the marketplace for those products? What are the customers doing? We firmly stand, look in the rearview mirror, and try to figure out what we did last year first. And then we try to see how could we try to extend it a little bit. Maybe improve it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. We don't go beyond 5% because that puts our bonus for next year at jeopardy, right? Yeah, planning. Planning systems are designed to look in the rearview mirror. And the first thing these great companies did, I'm going way out on a limb with that word, but the companies that don't get stuck, the first thing they do is they don't do their planning that way. Instead of starting by looking at last year, they start off by looking 5 years into the future. They put a lot of energy into scenario planning. What's the world going to look like in 2015? And just start thinking about that in your business. You do realize that by 2015, almost nobody will listen to music on the radio. Why would you when everybody's got an MP3 player? The only reason you listen to the radio is to hear somebody say something very current about the ball game last night, right? Or some other talk that you're interested in. You're probably not going to watch much television. Why would you when every PC, well, let's go beyond that. Your Kindle, your Sony e-reader, your iPhone, they're all going to have access to every program you'd ever want to watch. Why would you watch television, right? If you're in the consumer products business, what are you going to spend your ad dollars on in 2015? Are you going to launch new products by trying to put them on NBC? Will there be an NBC? Right? You got to really start thinking hard about what the future is going to look like, and that's the first step of the Phoenix Principle. If you want to keep yourself alive, you want to keep yourself going, you want to stay out of those ruts, it's not about planning from the past, it's about planning for the future. So start off, first and foremost, by taking a look at how you develop your scenarios. And then number two, don't ask your customers to do it for you. How many of you have strategic customer groups? Nobody? Come on. You got strategic customers. And how do you define a strategic customer? They're big. Not necessarily insightful, right? They're big. Why are they strategic? Because you want to defend them, right? That's part of the old strategy. So we have to learn that if you're going to ask a customer what the future's about, they're going to tell you, I want it faster, I want it better, I want more of it, and I want it cheaper. Okay, we finished that focus group. Honestly, do you think your customers are going to tell you what you got to do to succeed in 2015? Don't ever forget, IBM invented the PC, right? Down in Boca Raton, Florida. They got into the market for PCs, and then they shelved the business 5 years later. They shelved it because they said nobody wanted to buy PCs because they interviewed their customers. Data center managers running mainframes, mini computers, and they said, our customers don't want PCs, so we're getting out of the business. Don't talk to your customers. The second most important thing you do if you want to be successful is you pay attention to the competition. That's who's going to tell you more than anything else. And it's not just the three people you're used to talking to. Look at the people on the fringe. The Chicago Tribune filed for bankruptcy this year. They never saw it coming. They were so busy looking at the Sun-Times, they were so busy out in LA paying attention to the Orange County Register that they didn't even pay attention to Google. Taking all those ad dollars to put them on the web. And they laughed at Craigslist. Well, nobody downtown that had their pension put into those bonds at the Tribune is laughing anymore. Right? You got to pay attention to the competition. You have to be obsessive about the competition. That will tell you more than talking to your customers will. The third thing that these companies do that stay out of the rut is they're disruptive. We're kind of taught from the time we're little to color in the lines, right? Don't make waves, don't cause trouble. Learn how to do more of what the success formula told us to do. That just gets you more of what the success formula always did, right? So when we see these companies that are able to avoid the traps, what they do is they tolerate a lot of disruption inside the organization. There's one CEO that has made more money for his company than any other CEO in history. By a considerable amount, actually. His name was Mr. Welch. Does anybody remember what his nickname was? Neutron Jack. Last week, Fortune magazine named their CEO of the decade. Does anybody know who it was? Steve Jobs. These are not people that lack colorfulness. These are not people that practice coloring inside the lines. These are people willing to be disruptive. And what we see are people that are more successful, that get ahead, people that are able to run their organizations well. Whether it occurs at the CEO level or at the level of a manager, they're willing to be disruptive. They're willing to find new answers, new solutions. They're willing to think differently, and that requires an attitude of disruption. Now, once you've started to have scenarios about the future, you're obsessing about your competitors, and you're willing to be disruptive, then the last piece of this is you have to have white space to do new things. New and different things. Somebody's responsible for running a business. They have to run that business. They are focused on cutting costs out of the business. They are focused on efficiency. To ask that same person to now be highly innovative, it will never work. You can't run those two organizations in the same place in the same way at the same time. So you have to have a separate organization. You have to have a separate place where people can do these new and different things. And that's what I call white space. What makes up white space? The first and most important thing is you have to have permission to operate in a different way. Once granted permission to violate that old success formula, then you need some resources. With permission and resources, Americans can do great things. While we're sitting here talking about how happy we are for 2009 to go away, I want you to think about some companies out there that think 2009 was just great. Start with Google. Think about Apple. Think about Virgin. There are people out there making more money today than they made last year and the year before, and they're happy with the way the world is because they are able to ride with the market shifts. And I think all of you can too. I'm optimistic for the future once we learn to start to operate in a slightly different way. Thank you very much.